So I'm going to talk about what I'm doing in school. I'm a graduate student, and then I talk about the question that I'm trying to figure out the answer to. And the question that I'm trying to figure out the answer to is, how do we sense how humid it is in the air? You all know about humidity? Like on a rainy day when it feels like more sticky, and then some days it feels more dry?
Yeah.
You all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can perceive that, but the question is that nobody knows how we can do that. So, but we do know that we're perceiving it through our senses. So I wanted to really quickly see, like, what are our senses? Can anyone tell us what? Does anyone know?
Sight, hearing,
Sight.
smell, taste.
Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. Great. Those are the 5 senses. So this is you see it. You see all the senses here. But which sense do you think we use to sense humidity? Wait, you just went.
Touch.
Touch. That's very good.
Taste.
Taste. Oh, that's good. You can sometimes kind of, yeah. I know what you mean. Feel it. Yeah, you can feel it. So, that's really the question that I'm trying to solve for my PhD. So how do we sense that? We've gone through it. Some say we taste, some say we might feel it. Does anyone think we hear it?
Yes.
Sometimes.
You can see it.
You can see it, but so maybe we can kind of rule out maybe we don't hear it, but we're not sure.
You feel it.
The reason why we're not sure is because almost nothing is known about this sense. So scientists have been studying how we see, how we hear, how we taste, how we smell, how we feel, and they've discovered a tremendous amount. They know basically how we do all those things in a lot of detail exactly, but there's almost nothing known on how we sense this. So it's really a mystery. So we have to go by our intuition. So when I was told I was looking for more information on this, and I didn't find any, I was really surprised. I'm like, how come this sense is a big sense, and how come nobody knows about it? But it's really true that nothing is known about this sense. So we got to figure it out for ourselves how we want to try to study this. So what this one's saying, although we don't know anything, because it's a sense, we do know that it probably uses neurons. We get our senses through neurons. Have you studied yet what neurons are? Brain cells.
Oh yeah.
You know about the brain. So all the cells that make up the brain are neurons, and then they travel from the brain all over your body. And so, like when you feel something, it's because the neuron is sending a signal, and your brain's feeling it. So somehow these neurons are telling us that it's more wet, more humid, or if it's less humid, but we don't know anything else. So, but knowing that it's neurons, we got to think about how do we want to study that? What kind of animal do we want to study it? These neurons here, like I was saying, they make up your brain, and they send signals around they're really long, and they talk to each other, and so all the thoughts you have, all the feelings you have are from these neurons. And your brain has 100 billion neurons, so really a lot. So I started thinking about that number 100 billion because we're trying to I wonder which neuron senses the humidity.
What is the difference between a neuron and a nerve cell?
Nothing?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nerves are
Yeah.
neurons. They're
No, yeah,
the same?
I'm sorry. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, a
Okay.
nerve cell. A nerve cell. There are other cells in the brain besides nerve cells, but there's 100 billion nerve cells in the brain. So, which nerve cells are sensing the humidity? It's hard to say, and if there's 100 billion, it'll take a while to figure it out. Because think about it, if that's the same as the population of 16 Earths, 100 billion. So if I just had this question like, do you sense humidity, and went to every person on the whole planet, and hoping one tells me, and then have to go to 16 different planets, it's going to take a long time to study this. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's pretty hard to study about how we sense moisture by studying human sensing moisture. So we have to find another way to study something sense moisture. So this is why I want to introduce this. can we learn from toys? Scientists play with the toys all the time. And what by toys, I'll explain to you. So here's a regular car. There's 20,000 parts. So it's really complicated. There's all these different parts that make up this regular car. Now, if we get a toy car, there's a lot less parts. But does a toy car kind of look like a regular car? Nope.
Yes.
All right, I got that last time. Some might look like regular cars. And some aspects are the same. Do toy cars roll like regular cars?
No.
Yeah, pretty much. So we could learn about how things roll by studying a toy car. We might not have to study a regular car. So in the same way, so what I'm trying to say is, although we can't learn everything about a complicated regular car by studying a toy car, we can learn some things. So in the same way, instead of studying a complicated thing like you, that has 1 trillion cells, one in 10 of those are nerve cells, amazingly complicated. Scientists study other things that are a little bit more simple. For instance, they can study things in mice. And mice still have 75 million nerve cells in their brain, so there's still a lot to ask. So I didn't really want to study this question in mice. Other scientists who want things even more simple might study something in flies. And you can learn a lot of really interesting things about studying flies, amazingly enough. But they even have 10 million of these nerve cells. So, but there's this worm that has only 300 nerve cells. So it seemed reasonable that I could ask 300 people a question and maybe get an answer. A lot more reasonable than asking 10 million people a question and getting an answer. So I thought, well, I'll try to see if the worms can sense the humidity, and maybe we can learn from the worms how they sense the humidity. But the problem was nobody had ever shown that the worms can sense moisture. Oh, so why could we study a worm to learn about ourselves? Does that seem strange to you all?
Yep.
Then why don't we study people? How can we study other things? Okay, most of what's known about humans are because of what we studied in other animals. And that might seem strange to you when he said there's 1 trillion cells here. There's only 1,000 cells here. So this is so much more simple, right? But if you look at the parts that make up the cells, and so each cell is made up of different parts. We're going to call those parts genes. Whenever you see genes, you can just think cell parts. So there's about 20,000 cell parts that make up every cell in our body. And a worm, it also has about 20,000 cell parts that make up its cells. It has less cells, but each of its cells are made up of a similar amount of parts. And we know that 40% of the worm parts are human parts. So we have a good chance if we learn something about these worm parts that the worm uses to sense the humidity, then we can look for those parts in human, and then we can get some ideas about how humans. So that was the idea. But the problem is the worms have to be able to sense humidity. So since no one had ever shown that, I had to find out a way to get them to see if they can or they can't. So you have to think about, would worms want to sense humidity? Because usually things that they can do things that will help them out in their environment. So this worm, although it looks big here, is actually really small. So there's a newsprint that's like a newspaper comma. So they're so small, I thought, well, if you just leave those out in the air, that they're going to dry out real quick. So they probably don't want to get dry. So they need to find a way to stay out of where it's dry, right? And then also look at this. What do you think this is? Is
No,
a pizza? No.
That's like
This would be the grossest pizza you've ever seen. This is all mold. These are all different mold colonies. And what used to be on this plate were worms. And so you can see the natural enemy of worms are mold. It's kind of strange because it's not another animal. But this mold will grow and wrap around the worms and like constrain them and eat them. And so what do you can think about this for a second. Do you think, does mold grow where it's really dry, or does it grow where it's really moist?
Moist.
I heard both.
Moist.
Dry, moist.
It's moist.
I heard moist.
It's moist.
Okay.
Because
dry.
if you keep moist,
Dry.
like something.
Like
or
soil.
bread.
A lot of mold grows where it's really moist, and so I was thinking that might be a reason why worms might not want to be where it's really moist, because it's kind of like going into the bad part of town or something. Like it's more dangerous because that's where mold might hit them. It might not, but they know where if it's moist, they might not want to go there. So I was thinking in my head these things. So I think worms should be able to show how they can sense moisture. So here's what they look like. They're really small. Here's a magnification. You'll get a better picture of them later. But to give you an idea, this is how big they are. This is teeny. And you're going to see some real ones wiggling around back there at the end, too. So I was going to give them a chance. How could we find out if these worms do sense moisture? That was my first problem. So what I did was kind of do something similar to like a football field, where I put them here in the middle of the football field, and on top of it is the kind of gel. It's kind of like Jell-O, but more hard. And there's something special about this Jell-O. It makes them feel extra wet. It's made to make them feel extra wet. And then I put them, and then after putting them on there, one side I have where it makes it dry, and the other side I have water where it makes it wet. And then here's a picture of what it actually looks like. I had these plastic boxes made, and if you look in here, so you put the worms here on the middle, and then it's dry over here. This is kind of like baking powder, if you all know, so it dries things out, and then water here. And so the question is, so yeah. So they start off here in the middle, and then after some time, we look and I see they're wanting to go to the dry side. Some still are in the middle. One goes over here to the wet side, but mostly they go to the dry side. So that was really interesting to me, because the only thing difference between these sides was the amount of humidity in the atmosphere around them. So it seems like they were responding to the humidity. So if you look here, you can actually see the tracks of the actual worms. So these are like traces of where the worms go. So on this side is where it's dry up on top, and you put the worms here. The worms are here in the middle to begin with. On this side also, the worms are here in the middle to begin with. But there's nothing to make it dry or wet on either side. Nothing's happening. So if you look here, you can kind of see, it seems like the worms are going straight up. These lines are kind of straight. Versus here, you might see, you see the lines are going in all the different directions. Do you all follow?
Yeah.
You see? So since the only difference between these two things was that this one had, the humidity was different across it, and this one the humidity was the same everywhere. So this leads me to believe that yes, they can sense humidity, because when they're in this situation, they can respond by going straight to the dry side.
What was creating the humidity?
So water.
Oh.
So I have it water here on this side, so
Okay.
put the worms here, and then on this side it's a desiccant that just sucks up water.
Okay.
So it makes it extra dry on this side, and this side, it gets wet.
And they would go towards the desiccant.
Towards the desiccant, yeah, towards the dry side. Yeah, the gel is made so that they feel extra wet, and we're thinking maybe that's why. Because intuitively, you might think they want to go to water, but they actually seem to want to avoid water. So now we see they can sense the humidity, but how? We still don't know how, so we need to think about it. So one way you can notice humidity is when you have a bad hair day. I don't know if you all noticed. Like when it's real humid outside, like the hair doesn't do what you want, and it gets like extra curly if you have curly hair. So you notice that? There's even like hairspray called anti-humidity spray, I saw, So it's kind of interesting, because hair is a way that you can tell about humidity. And up 100 years ago, when they wanted to know the humidity, they actually used a human hair to tell the humidity. I'm not going to go into this too much, but basically they had a human hair here on a spring, and then when it was more humid, the hair would be longer, and they know that it was longer, and then they would know the humidity. And this was actually used, it's very accurate, it was used up, through teleelectronics in the 50s. So maybe worms use hair to sense humidity. But do worms have hair? Oh, they actually kind of do have hairs. It's interesting. They don't have hair like a caterpillar, like how you think about hair, like we have hair. But they have these little, but they're sensory hairs. And these sensory hairs are what allows them to sense chemicals. It's what allows them to taste. It allows them to sense odorants, smells. They use these hairs. These hairs are specially made for these different senses. So we thought, well, maybe these hairs also respond to humidity because maybe they get longer or shorter or something. So the first way I tried to answer this question then was I was able to test worms where everything in the worm's normal except it doesn't make these hairs. So remember when I was talking before about the different parts, the 20,000 parts of the worm? Then you can have it where certain parts are, you can make worms where certain parts aren't working. So in this way, we were able to make sure that none of the hairs were made. And then we can test those worms and see if they respond to moisture. So,
Josh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that picture at all. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
What part of the worm is that you're looking at?
Okay, yeah, so thanks. So here is their skin. This is the outside of the worm.
Oh, okay.
And then, so this is actually like a little hole, like a pore. And then these teeny little hairs are coming, and then it's exposed to the outside. And then these are specialized for picking up different tastes or different smells. Like
Okay, so that's the layer of skin we're looking at.
Yeah, so this is this is like really magnified, and this is the skin.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So here, I want to show you a video. Uh-oh. There we go. Can you all see here the worms crawling? I can play it again. So over here it's dry, and over here is where they started. So can you all see? Does it look like they're going to the dry side?
Yep.
It looks like magic. Is that mold?
Yeah, that's not in real time. Is
That's sped up. That's sped up. I'll do it again. That's maybe over 10 minutes of time sped up to 30 seconds. They're not that frisky. So these are the worms that were missing the hairs.
Ready, Lise?
But what do y'all think? Do you think that they are sensing the humidity?
Yep.
Oh, I think that they are because the way they move.
Because they move. Because why do you think
The way they
that?
move, the hair will touch it.
Hmm.
'Cause they
But
do
these
like
worms
that.
didn't have hair. These worms were
Maybe they
mutant worms
have
without
hair.
hair. Uh-huh.
What kind of worms are they? Like,
You'll get to see they're really, really teeny. They're cousins of earthworms. I'm sorry, what? So that's kind of the thing that was kind of interesting is that even though they need these hair for all the other senses, it seems like for this sense they don't need it. So this is really actually kind of confusing. Like we didn't expect to see this. So that makes it really, in a way, more interesting too, because all the other senses go through these hairs, and they know. And in this sense, it's a little different. So the question is, back the same. How do they sense humidity? And the answer is just, you just got to keep trying. So that was one thing that we're trying out, and now we're trying different things, and it's just this ongoing process. So now I wanted to have y'all take a look at the worms themselves, and also I wanted you also have to give me a rating here. You can let me know.
So can we just have them go like
Yeah,
table at a time?
y'all can go, and actually
Okay,
I have a
why don't
little,
y'all for-
if y'all stay in your seats too, I have another little, while y'all are waiting, I have a presentation with a lot of pictures
Stephanie,
that,
did I need help to
that-
do it or is it
No, it's already set up.
Yeah.
Just turn on the microscopes.
You guys know where the light is, right?
Yeah, let's see. And you can just look through it. Move this.
Yep, just give me
Which overall?
yeah, totally, yes. All right, you guys saw it? Is it different stuff? Should they see each one or is it the
They're
same?
basically the same.
they're
Okay.
pretty much the same.
All
Yeah.
right, so once you see one, you see one.
See, one of the neat things about these worms is that you can make them glow in different ways. And so, so here's where they're glowing in their different. In this one, they're glowing in different types of muscle. Here's another one. You can see they have little eggs. You can see the eggs in here. Here's what would happen if it was really big, or you were really small. So yeah, they might.
No eyes?
No eyes. They can kind of sense brightness or darkness, but they don't have to be real eyes. Here's one that has two different colors of glowing. Here, these are the different nerve cells glowing. Here in green, and then I'm not sure about the red.
How do you make them glow?
How do you make them glow? You can do. That's what's neat is you can have it. You can go into the worm DNA. Y'all know about DNA?
Okay, you guys good?
So you can go into the worm DNA and you can say, whenever you make this, regular piece of this nerve cell, make that piece, but now make it and add this glowing green thing to the end. And so wherever that piece is, then it'll glow green. Does that make sense?
So they're born glowing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You bred them to glow?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You can make them glow in different ways, and that's a way you can learn a lot about things.
That means
This is kind of interesting. This is a worm egg, so you can see it how it's developing from 2 cells to a baby worm.
Yeah, there's 2 over there.
Okay.
I just let that table go.
okay,
at it.
awesome. Okay.
Here's one that's been made glowing.
Brittany and Sydney, you guys want to go look at those over there? All right, Esteban. Just hold on.
Oh, enthusiasm? Like whatever didn't seem like.
No, there's only 2 over there, so just hold on.
Enjoyed what they're doing.